spent way too long indoors today. It's almost noon. It's my first time outside. I've been pretty burnt. It's been a little tough making videos. But great things happen when we just sit and think and process. So I'm gonna do that here on this playground park bench. There are a few key things I'm trying to focus on with my vlogs and just having a channel and making videos. One is that I don't want to focus on outcomes. I want to vlog things because I actually want to. And I want it to be accessible and enjoyable and sustainable. And I was listening to this podcast with Dr. K, HowToGamer.gg on YouTube. Super amazing content. He's like a psychologist, focuses on a lot of different stuff, but he was basically like a gaming addict. Like he was almost dropping out of college, like failing out of college, and then he went to India and tried to become a monk for a while. Then he came back and now he is super successful. But the thing is, like, he never chased success. Like he says, the times when he's most successful, and he's also like a content creator, and he says like the times that he's most successful is when he's not thinking about success at all. And it's definitely tough. I think a lot of people, like a lot of content creators, when you start growing, when you start having something, you attach. And that's kind of what he talks about. Like, if you have something, you attach to it because you're afraid of losing it. You don't want to lose that thing. And so one of my videos that I published yesterday is now my best performing video. Within like 24 hours, I got like 400 views almost. Which, you know, to many people is not a lot. But for me, I mean, that's my all-time high now. And like, it's easy for our mind to start getting anxious and being like, oh my gosh, like, what did I do right? Like, I should do that again. Like, I want to succeed. Like, I don't want to fail. This and that. But at the same time, it's when we attach to things that we become unhappy. And what will for sure ruin my vlogs and ruin my sustainability and enjoyment of my vlogs is attaching to outcomes and chasing outcomes, because we can't control outcomes. There's no control of outcomes. We have just our action, and we can focus on our action and what we do, but our outcome is just dependent on so many things and so many factors, and most of it is out of our control. And I guess that's kind of like a tough pill to swallow, especially as like a content creator, because it's kind of just like a void. Like, you put something out, it's like being in like the darkness or something. Oh no, I know what it's reminding me of. It's kind of like there's an experiment where they put like a human in a room, in a box, and there's like a button in the room, and there's all these different things, and they asked the human like, oh, figure out a way out of this room. And a lot of them like try like a bunch of different shit. Like some of them like press the button once, or they press it in intervals, like every 10 seconds. Some of them like press it really fast. Some of them don't press it. Some of them like pretend to press and then stop. And it's just this really fascinating thing where like basically the experiment is like rigged. Like there's nothing anyone does in that room that actually matters. The door opens at a certain time regardless of what they do. And I think there was like one person that just sat there and didn't do anything, and eventually the door opened. But every time that the door opened, everyone thought that everyone thought that their actions in that room led to that door opening and were like the reason the door opened. But in reality, none of their actions were. And I feel like it's kind of similar with content creation, where it's like all we can do is like, I mean, we can do a whole bunch of different stuff, and like sometimes we think like, oh, this is why this video was successful, this is why this one performed well, like I need to do this again, I need to do that again, this and that. But in reality, like, you don't actually know. A lot of it is probably chance, luck, the YouTube algorithm working in mysterious ways. I mean, you never know. And so I guess I'm realizing that I just need to focus on keeping things enjoyable and improving my skills, listening to feedback, and making changes as I want to. But I think I want to be very mindful not to attach, not to chase outcomes, not to get so caught up in like, oh my gosh, like that video was super successful, what did I do, like what should I do, this and that. And like, you know, maybe it does help in some way, it is some sort of indicator, a slight compass, but most of it is just, I mean, we can't know, it's a void. We can't know what does what, if something actually leads to something. Causation versus correlation. And I guess that's been one of my biggest struggles, getting out of my head and just focusing on what I want to do, and not attaching the outcomes, not worrying so much about success, and just having fun and trusting the process. And I think one of the recurring themes or recurring like conflicts in my mind is the idea of like talking too much. But it always feels so good and like relieving to just be honest and just like get out of my head and just say what's on my mind. And I mean, the thing is too, like, to this day still, one of my best performing videos is just me talking, my raw reflections video. Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, maybe they're looking for like entertainment, and so like the talking isn't entertaining, maybe, like it's too serious or too deep. But I think there's gonna be people out there like me who really like musing over thoughts and reflections and making observations, and I think I need to just focus on just doing me, being me as I want to. And I think that's maybe why I've felt a little burned out lately, is I've been feeling more pressure to, I guess I'm in a way chasing outcomes, because I'm worrying more about like other shit that has to do with performance. Like I'm worrying about not posting too much, and like, I mean, analytics wise, like my videos were doing really poorly, and I was feeling really burned out because I was putting in all this effort and getting nothing in return. My videos were getting like no views at all. The last one I uploaded that was my top performing video within 24 hours. That was the first video in like a string of videos that was actually performing well and actually getting impressions and getting likes. And so I guess it's hard to not focus on performance, and it's hard, I guess, more so because you do want to focus on performance to some way, but to some extent. But it's also really hard to find the balance between thinking about performance but also trying not to worry too much about performance. So it's just been really tough. And I think maybe one of the easiest ways to go about it is to just press record and just see like what comes to mind. What do I want to talk about? and the feelings, because sometimes, like, you know, if I'm feeling pressured to talk about something, I'll start talking about it and I'll feel it's off, I'll feel it's wrong, I'll feel that I'm not like into it, I'm not enthusiastic about it. And that's definitely an indicator that like I'm being driven by something else to talk about that. And I mean, even with this video now, like as soon as I started talking, I felt just kind of shitty, and I felt like there was stuff I wanted to get off my chest. And yeah. And now that I've ranted or rambled, I don't know about ranting. I think ranting is a little, I don't know. I feel like ranting is kind of toxic. I think it's become very popular, especially on like Twitter and shit. Like everyone wants to be really mad and like just like go in on people and lash out at things. And you know, it has its place, you know, it has its purpose, but I think overall it's a little, I mean, I think if you're also very angry about something, it's something that is like alleviating to hear someone else like express, like put your feelings and thoughts into words. But I think the problem these days too is that a lot of people are just really angry people, especially on the internet. A lot of people that are just very miserable, very angry, and they just want a reason to be mad. And they love to rant, they love to just shit on things and shit on people, and I think it's kind of dangerous, and definitely I think it's opposed to what I want to do with my channel. I think the world needs more understanding, and we need to ask more questions of each other and understand why things are the way they are. I think a lot of times we might see something that's different from what we believe or what we think, and we just feel defensive or angry that anyone can even have such a stance, which has its place, it has its purpose, but at the end of the day, in the long term, if you want solutions, if you want solutions and you want something to change, you need to understand why something is happening and address those things. And I think a lot of time people just stay focused on the anger and the emotion and the hatred, or they attach to that emotion, they attach to that hatred, it becomes their identity, and then they start hating on another identity, another way that people identify, whether that's ethnicity, religion, culture, race, I mean, whatever. And I think that's just kind of how these cycles perpetuate, whether it's war or just by like polarization, just people hating on each other. I feel like in the US this cycle is ongoing now for years now. Everyone on the Republican side hates the Democrats, everyone on the Democratic side hates, not everyone, I shouldn't say everyone, but a lot of people just hate the people on the other side and just ridicule them and think they're pieces of shit for just the beliefs they hold, but they never stop to ask why. Why do they hold those beliefs? Why are those beliefs appealing to them? And a lot of times it's not, sometimes it could just be that they're misinformed, or that, you know, if you approach them with respect and with humanity and have a civil conversation about it, you'll realize there's a lot of misunderstanding. And I think there always is. There's always a misunderstanding. And the more that we react with spite and hatred and just reactions, in immediate reactions, I think the worse that divide becomes. And I think the world needs less of that. One of the thoughts that came to my mind right now was that this video isn't stimulating enough, which is maybe true, but for who, right? I mean, a conversation used to be very stimulating, and for many people it still is. It's just mainly online where people's attention spans are deteriorating, and there's TikTok and all this short form content that no one can concentrate on anything for long anymore. And it's tough for me because like I've thought about it a lot, and like I kind of feel like I don't want to make like YouTube shorts because I feel like it's kind of just, it's very competitive and it's only heading in one direction. I mean, it's meant to head in that direction, which is faster paced, more stimulating, more of a hook, more captivating content. But I feel like you can't really capture nuance in something. In a 6, 7, 8 second clip, you can't capture nuance. It's way too short. And I mean, maybe with some insane editing, maybe you can kind of get far, but I mean, humans aren't meant to, I don't think humans are meant to be where we are today, in the sense that a lot of these younger generations that just get an iPad that just get handed an iPad as kids and just get raised by the internet, it's very destructive, and I think it's one of the worst things that's happening in modern society right now. And I mean, it's no different for me. I mean, I used to be very addicted to video games, and I used to suffer from it, and I still do. I mean, it can be very hard to like not scroll YouTube shorts, not scroll Instagram discovery. Luckily, I never got on TikTok, so I don't have that problem. But it's tough. I mean, they're designed to hook you in and to keep you hooked. And a lot of us, I guarantee, a lot of people listening struggle with that kind of shit. Like, I mean, our screen time is absurd these days. I think the average in the US is like 4, 5, 6 hours a day or some shit. And it's just very destructive. And I think a lot more people are lost and just don't realize how far gone they are. Like, or they realize but they feel defenseless. Like, I think it's so, there's this interesting video I watched that talks about like enjoyment, and it talks about like, you know, at one point, like our baseline, like as a kid, or if we were a kid in the early 2000s like me, like back when we would just go on a bike ride or go to a friend's house and just like chat or play with rocks or marbles or I don't know, whatever. Like, it was so simple. We could be like captivated and engaged by such simple activities. And I think as time has gone on, we require more and more stimulation. And it's just like this endless cycle. And it's up to us to kind of break away from that. And I think it's up to us to like realize it's a problem in our lives, which I think most people probably agree that it is. And then the harder part is understanding, okay, well, why has it come to this point and how do we get out of it? Which, you know, I think a lot of that has to do with self-control, and like, it's almost like being like addicted to something. Like, I feel like you have to slowly kind of off-ramp from it and increase the amount of time that you spend your time doing nothing, just sitting. I mean, even what I'm doing right now, just sitting on a park bench, like, I guarantee most people watching don't just do that. Not in like an egotistical way, but like a lot of people, me included, like, I mean, I was indoors on my phone from like 8, 9 a.m. till like now, which is like almost 1. And like my screen time has been pretty abysmal the past couple weeks. And so it's not like an ego thing. Like, we struggle so much with being by ourselves, but it's so important. And the more that we run away from it, the harder it becomes. And I think so many of our problems today are from a lack of awareness, a lack of like being in tune with ourselves. It's so easy to be distracted and be stimulated by different things. Jump from podcasts to YouTube videos to Instagram reels to whatever. And there's just endless endless stream of distraction. And I mean, companies know this. Like, they're designing all their products, YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat. I mean, YouTube Shorts wasn't even around until like a couple years ago, I think. And it was like a response to like the success of TikTok and Instagram Reels. And now it's probably a huge thing for them. In fact, on the YouTube app for iOS, it doesn't even mention much about like YouTube videos. Like, if you look at the app, like, it's advertising like the shorts. And that's just the world we live in. And we have to respond, we have to adapt, we have to understand and be aware and acknowledge how it's affecting us. And I think for a lot of us, we would acknowledge that it's not good, it's unhealthy, it's destroying our lives in some cases. And I think as like a content creator, it's often like kind of a struggle where it's like you want to be successful and you want to like create content that's engaging for as many people as possible. But at some point you have to put in so much effort to reel in those younger audiences that have such short attention spans. And for me, it's been tough, like balancing like wanting to be raw and give like a real authentic sense of the places I'm at with like editing it down and making it a little more digestible for more people, because I feel like there are important messages and things that I want to show the world. But the question is, how do I show it? How do I show it? And who do I aim to show it to? Because I think it's a losing game to choose the very young generation of really low attention span, because unless you're just pumping out like garbage, like brain dead content, which there's a lot of channels that just focus on mass content, low quality content for like kids and shit. But I mean, I'm definitely not gearing my videos for kids. It's definitely more, I want it to be more serious and more real and more human. But it is tough to balance it. And I think if you focus on those people with really short attention span, it's like an uphill battle. Like, it's just, the goalposts just keep moving, and it just becomes, the content just has to become more and more crazy, more and more stimulating. I mean, take a look at like Mr. Beast, like the things he was doing. I mean, I think he even acknowledges now. I haven't looked at his channel in a while, but I remember seeing an interview where he talks about wanting to shift away from his former content, which absolutely took YouTube by storm. But you know, there's kind of like limits to these things. You can only get so crazy with your videos and have so many resources. And I think now he was talking about wanting to shift to more like human-centered things and more impactful things, more fulfilling things. But a lot of people are still in that like Mr. Beast mentality, like trying to make really good, successful content and chasing that outcome. But I think it's unsustainable. It's a losing game. It's a trap. I mean, it's like happiness. Like, the more you want to be happy, the more unhappy you become, because you chase more and more things. You worry more and more about it. You're worried about the future. You're worried about how your past might be affecting your happiness and all these things. And I feel like it's just, this paradox exists in so many ways. Sleep. The harder you want to sleep, the worse your sleep will be. And the more you're worrying about sleep, the worse your sleep will be. You will not fall asleep. It's about not caring, not attaching. And I recognize it at an intellectual level, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. And Dr. K, healthygamer.gg, talks about it a lot, and it's just, he has such amazing content. I really suggest checking him out. But it's so much harder to apply than it is to recognize mentally. And but I think it's so important. And I mean, we have entire societies built on these principles that are just a losing game. The US, hustle culture, like, you need more cars, you need bigger cars, bigger houses, you need to have more wives, fuck more bitches. etc., etc. Like, it's a losing game. That's not what happiness is. And a lot of people, we think happiness is, we confuse happiness with pleasure. And we think that because things give us pleasure, eating a cookie, let's say eating an Oreo cookie, we think we eat one Oreo cookie, it makes us happy. I mean, there was a box of Hershey's, I bought a box of milk here, soy milk, Hershey's flavored, and it said the taste of happiness. And it's like, no, it's really not. It's definitely not, because happiness is not a feeling. Like, happiness is like a direction. Happiness is feeling content. And we're constantly thinking that our happiness is dependent on external circumstances, like what I said. But it's really not. That's not happiness. That's pleasure. It's pleasurable to go from having a Honda Civic to a Lamborghini. Sure as hell, I bet you. It's pleasurable to upgrade from a one-bedroom apartment to a mansion. I bet as hell. Yeah, it's probably pleasurable as fuck. But it's temporary. And the goalposts just keep moving. It makes you content or pleasured or joyous, and you feel accomplished. But then what happens after that, right? You think, okay, now what? What do I need next? What do I need to do? What do I need to get? We think that our happiness comes from fulfilling our wants, when in reality, it's about controlling our wants and appreciating what we have. And I think a lot of people probably can agree with that. If you really ask them and have a conversation about it, they probably agree with that principle, but it's so strange that, like, in reality, most people, like, societies are built on the opposite, that the more you seek and the more you get, the happier you'll be. But it's not. You just keep moving that goalpost, and you need more and more to get that same feeling of contentedness, if you want to call it that. But it's not really contentedness. And contentedness is feeling well, feeling content, feeling positively, I guess, peaceful in the absence of stimuli. Feeling content truly would be sitting in the darkness in your room, maybe, and just feeling good, just being with yourself and feeling that that's enough. Like, what a beautiful thing. You're alive. You're with yourself. You have the ability to this, that, X, Y, Z. And I mean, even this, like, at one point in time, like, sitting on a bench, I mean, I've always thought that, like, the old people have it right. Like, the old people sitting on benches are some of the happiest people I've seen. And there's just something so rejuvenating about just sitting and just being with yourself. And it takes a lot of work. I mean, I think that's something that I've recognized very early in my life, and I've done a lot of activities. I think when I was most content with my life were the times when I did so many activities by myself, hiking, going to the gym, going on runs, bike riding. I did so many things by myself that allowed me to really process my thoughts, really process my feelings, and just enjoy it. Just not focus on the past, not focus on the present, or not focus on the future. Just be fully present, living life, enjoying it. And I guarantee you, think back to the happiest moment in your life, when you felt most just content. And what you'll find is that you probably were fully focused on just living on that moment. And you weren't worried about the past, you weren't worried about the future, you weren't like, oh, like, what, I have homework, I have deadlines, I have a project I need to turn in, I have this and that. You were just in the present and enjoying your life. And now it feels like that's just harder and harder to come by. We're constantly worried about the past, or worrying about the future, anxious about the future. And it's just such a vicious cycle. And I mean, I kind of thought about this for a lot in the past several years, especially since quarantine, because that was when I was at like a low point in my life, and it had been so long since I really felt happiness and felt content. And now in retrospect, when I think back, it makes perfect sense, because over quarantine, I was so focused on everything that was pleasurable, but nothing that made me happy. And there's a saying that I've really loved lately, which is, if you make hard decisions now, life will be easy later. If you make easy decisions now, life will be hard later. For example, it's easy to indulge in our cravings. I want some pizza, I want some Oreos, I want some KFC, which unfortunately I did intend to go eat because I need to use my credit card to buy food for my last day here. But anyways, if you want to indulge in these things, yeah, it's easy. It's so easy to be like, oh yeah, let's just go and have a nice pizza. Like, it's fine. Like, we've been doing really well, blah, blah. And you know, the first time it won't do much. But the nature of desire is, the more that you do something, the more that you need to feel the same enjoyment or the same pleasure from that thing. First, it's one slice of pizza is just amazing. Then it's like the next time you have to eat 2 slices for that same hit. A week later, you have to eat 3, and you just keep building. And then by the time you're eating a whole pizza, you're like feeling like shit. You're like, oh my God, like what have I done? You feel guilty, you feel ashamed. And then what do we do when we feel guilty and we feel ashamed? We want to get rid of those negative feelings, but instead of facing them and processing them and figuring out how to deal with it, we do the only thing we know how to do best, which is run away from it. And what's a great way to run away from shame and guilt? Indulging in our desires. So you eat more pizza, you eat more this and that. And this is exactly what I did over quarantine. My relationship was absolute ass. I reached the most I ever weighed in my whole life, like 263 pounds. And that was because we were locked inside and I was just making very poor choices. I stopped going to the gym. I used COVID as an excuse to not stay physically fit. And all these things that I had worked so hard to build up, and I had such an easy life for a while because I invested in myself and I made those hard decisions to lead to that easy life. I did a lot of exercising, like I wouldn't procrastinate, like, I don't know, just, I'm a big proponent of like doing things that are unpleasant, because it's very important to build up that resistance and to be in control of your mind, to not be controlled by your impulses. But during this time, I was completely controlled by my impulses. I was ordering takeout almost every day. I was not working out. Some days I wouldn't even leave the house. I was playing video games most of the days, almost all day. And at first, I mean, nothing happens. It takes a while for I guess you could say even like your karma to catch up. Like every action we take has a consequence, and it's delayed in a lot of times, and it's delayed both ways. If I'm indulging every day, if I right now start indulging every day, a week or 2 might go by, I probably will still feel fine, but sooner or later it's gonna catch up, and all that shit is gonna catch up to me, and I'm gonna feel like shit. And when you feel like shit, you wanna indulge even more, so it just becomes this vicious cycle that just propagates? That just, maybe that's the word, propagates itself. But it becomes easier and easier to indulge, and it makes your life harder and harder and harder. And this was over several years, over COVID and quarantine, where I was making those easy decisions and I thought it wouldn't affect me, but at some point I stepped on that scale and I saw I was 263 pounds, the most I'd ever been my whole life. I think before that, the highest I'd hit was like 240 pounds or something. And this was just, and I think before COVID started, I was at like 220 or something. So this is just immense weight gain, and everything was falling apart, and I was just running from all my problems, and it just catches up to you. And in the same way, it takes a while to unbury that and get yourself out of this hole. We dig ourselves in these holes, and then we want to get out, and we expect that, okay, like, we think, oh, how long is it gonna take? Like, how much effort do I need to put in? All these questions, which are just all the wrong questions. we dug ourselves in the hole. It's up to us to want to get out. And a lot of times people never get out. They never want to get out. They stay in that hole maybe till the day they die. And they just feel so hopeless and lost. They try, they fail, and then they think that it's just hopeless for them, and then they give up. But the thing is, it's the same as the way we got in that hole. You have to slowly dig yourself out. And it's kind of like when the momentum is down, if you're in a car and you're driving really fast, you can't just start reversing when you're going 80 on the highway. You have to slow down, eventually come to a stop, and then reverse. And it's the same thing. Like if you dig yourself in a hole like this, you make all these easy, indulging decisions, it's gonna take time for you to get out of that. And it's gonna mean a lot of work. Little tiny steps, day in and day out. And it's gonna feel impossible. You're gonna fail sometimes. You just have to expect that that's gonna be the case. But even when you fail, you're still making your way up. Even if you're taking 2 steps forward, 1 step back, you're still making progress. And in the long term, in the same way that you dug yourself in, you can dig yourself out. Or I guess like build yourself out. And so I guess like I just see all these problems, and I'm very interested in like these kind of, I guess, quandaries. And at an intellectual level, I agree with them like so wholeheartedly, but it's just so much harder to apply in person. And it's something that's coming up a lot with my vlogs because I have all these like mental barriers. And if you've been watching my videos, you can see this. I talk about it, and I try to be very honest and open about it. But I have all these mental barriers that just keep creeping up and creeping up. And the more I push myself to the direction I want to be, the harder it is. And Dr. K talks about like this really interesting, I think it's like a Hindu story or something, mythological story. I forget what, some sort of story. And it's basically talking about like there's like this pot of like nectar, like gold in the ocean. And these people are trying to get to it, but when they try to go, there's a bunch of poison at the surface. And so a lot of people just give up. They don't want to face that poison. And Dr. K talks about how this is basically the same as with humans and dealing with like our struggles, our mental health, our problems. We just keep suppressing things and burying things. And then when we try to, we come to a realization, we're like, oh my gosh, something needs to change. We need to change something. We need to create a better life for ourselves. And we start to dig into the ocean. And at first, it's just all this poison at the forefront. And it's like, if you never sit with yourself and just allow yourself to think, and like, when you finally do, it's going to be a lot of negative things. It's going to be all those feelings and thoughts and things that you don't allow yourself to process, that you might just keep distracting yourself from. And that's why when you go to bed at night, a lot of times, for a lot of you, maybe you feel really, really negative. And that's the thing, like, we need time to process, and there's going to be pain, but the more you run from pain and are incapable of tolerating pain, the worse it's going to get. It's only going to get worse. And this is something I've been trying to apply to my life, where it's like, things are going to be painful, there are going to be times of suffering, but I've been trying to just focus on acknowledging my emotions, acknowledging how I feel, including when I'm vlogging and I'm feeling really shit. Just acknowledging it, building that awareness, because as I build awareness, I'll be able to actually tune into that and process it. And it's like sifting through that poison. All this poison's coming up, it's gonna feel unpleasant, it's gonna suck, it's gonna be hard to tolerate it, but the more I slowly do it, and as long as I'm moving in the right direction in the long term, there's gonna be a point where I reach that gold, I reach that nectar, and it's gonna be easy. It's gonna be an easy life. It's gonna be easy as hell to vlog. And it's exciting to think about. And it's important to keep those things in mind. Remember your why. Why are you doing things? Why? And it goes both ways. Sometimes we don't ask ourselves why, And there are things we're doing that do not serve us in any capacity, but we still do them. And then we have to ask why. And the only way to find out why is to have those conversations with ourselves. And if we're constantly running from ourselves and too afraid to have conversations with ourselves, then we'll never get to the bottom of it. And I think there's a lot of times, and it's been my experience with vlogging, where there's something underlying, there's some sort of emotion or anxiety or insecurity or whatever that's driving certain beliefs, driving certain actions. And as you dive deeper, you kind of peel the layers, and eventually you see it for what it is. And you kind of have to just keep building awareness, and just slowly over time just commit to wanting to head in that right direction and focusing on the tiny steps you can take to go in that direction. And I think for a lot of people in the world today, the ones that grew up like me, constantly online, a lot of influence on the internet. I mean, the internet is a scary place. People are really negative. You see the worst of the worst, the best of the best, very toxic people. And it can really fuck up your mental, and it can kind of just turn you into one of those people. And so, yeah, I mean, it's just, I think one of the biggest things we can do is just take more time to sit with ourselves, because that's at the essence of everything. The way that we perceive life and we perceive reality is almost entirely dependent on our internal beliefs. If we believe the world is a shitty fucking place, you're gonna find that. You're gonna look at the world and see all the reasons why it's a shitty place. Same goes for the opposite way. We choose what we believe. We choose our truth. I think. I believe. And, you know, there's ugly aspects. There's good and bad to anything. I don't really believe in good and bad. I think it's easier to just accept things as they are and not make a judgment on it. But there's so much, if not everything, like, that you can accomplish by really tuning in with yourself and sorting out your internal state. Because if you're, oh my god, if you're feeling good and you are content with no stimuli, then even if there is stimuli, you're gonna feel content. And yeah, I guess this is kind of turned into a raw reflections video, where I just kind of talk about whatever the hell I want. And I think it's fitting. It's my last day in Malaysia, so I don't really feel like doing a whole too much. And I just kind of want to reflect and process and shit. But, yeah. And now I think I'll sit with myself, because whenever I do videos like this, where I just talk, I struggle with whether to separate it from my normal vlogs, like as a raw reflections video, which is what I did the first time, and I think that's still my most watched video, raw reflections. I struggle with whether to separate it or just count it as a vlog and just, yeah. But I don't know, I guess it's not really a vlog, maybe in part. I think a lot of my vlogs are kind of a mix of me doing my thinking and reflecting and shit like that, but also showing around and doing the things. I mean, I guess they're all doing the things I want to do, and there are some days where all I want to do is just sit and do nothing. And it's necessary. We can't always be on the move. We have to take time to rest and reflect and process and to be aware. And I mean, that's a whole nother thing, how to meditate and how to tune into yourself, because everyone's different. There's different ways for different people, but I think you just have to experiment. I mean, a lot of people just look for the answers, or like just want the answers to be given to them. Like they want to be told, like, oh yeah, just meditate for 20 minutes, you'll be good, blah, blah. But you have to, it's not about like forcing yourself. It's not about like just using brute force to do something. Like you have to get to a point where you're building that awareness and you actually want to change. You actually want to do something, because then it's not a sacrifice. It's not you like forcing yourself to do something. It's you wanting to do something because you trust, you trust and you hope that it's going to change you for the better, and that you'll thank yourself. And yeah, I guess I'll leave off with this. Another phrase that I've really loved lately is, I guess, asking yourself, like, will my future me thank me? And to that, I think, for taking the time to have this, I don't know, 30, 40 minute conversation with myself. I don't know if it's with myself or with, it's a little weird, isn't it, with concentration? Am I talking to me? Am I talking to you guys? Am I talking to my phone camera? Who knows? But I can definitely say with confidence now that future me will thank me for having this conversation with whoever, with whoever I had it with. And I mean, I feel amazing, actually, for having just said all this shit out loud and just processed it. And that's like one of my favorite parts about vlogging. And that's also one of the parts that worry me, because I think that people don't want to hear someone talk anymore these days. But I think there's a lot of people that do, and that's what I need to focus on. And I just need to keep building that awareness so that I know when it is that I'm like feeling a certain way and being driven to behaviors out of anxiety and out of insecurity, like telling me, oh, like, don't talk, or like, don't talk so much, or like, focus on the people, focus on the places, focus on this, focus on that, blah, 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 blah. Fucking our brain, man. But be compassionate of yourself, be patient. If you've been digging for many years, you have to dig your way out, build your way out for many years, some years at least as well. But it all comes down to awareness. And I am aware that this feels amazing to have said all this out loud, and I thank myself now, and I think I'll thank myself later. And I think when I actually come to uploading this, there'll probably be some part of me that maybe is a little more anxious, but the more I expect it and the more I'm aware of that, the more I'll be ready when that time comes to say no. My mind can fuck itself, my demons can fuck themselves. I know what is best for me, I know what I'll thank myself for, and I know what the world needs, and this is it right here. And that's what I can offer, that's my gift to the world. And if people can use it, they'll use it. If they don't want it, they won't. If it fails, if it gets 0 views, blah, 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 it doesn't matter. Yeah. Alright, hopefully at least one person watched this whole thing. That would be really cool. Can I get a comment in the chat if you stayed to the end? Oh man, we'll see. We'll see. I think I'll probably just leave it at that for today. I don't know if I'll vlog, I don't really want to. But this has been incredible, so I thank myself. And thank you for watching, if anyone's there. And that's all. Take care. Focus up. Ask yourself questions. And yeah, catch you later. Peace. Oh. I think these kitties were fighting with this kitty over here. I had to come tell them, chill out, focus on yourself, build that awareness, alright?